Folks, guess what? U.S. authorities took Scott Ritter off a plane to Russia, and they seized his passport. Now, also Judge Napolitano, same stuff happened with him. So guess who we have with us? We have Scott Ritter. He's a one-time Marine intelligence officer who served in the former Soviet Union, implementing arms control agreements. And from 1991 to 1998, he served as chief inspector for the United Nations in Iraq, leading the search for Iraq's prescribed weapons of mass destruction. He was later a vocal critic of the American decision to go to war in Iraq. He is also the author of 9 books, including his latest, Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control, and the End of the Soviet Union. Please welcome to the show, Scott Ritter. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing, Jimmy?
Good. So tell us what happened.
What happened? I was getting ready to board an airplane, JFK, yesterday. Still hard to believe. It was just yesterday. Just so the audience knows, this wasn't just any trip I was going on. This was to go to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, where I was to participate on 2 panels, hold meetings with officials, and then go on a 40-day tour of Russia to make a documentary film designed to help promote better relations between our 2 countries and avoid a nuclear war. So this isn't just getting kicked off a flight. This is terminating a project that was 8 months in the making and cost thousands of dollars. So, this is a big time, jab at me by the U.S. government. But I was getting on the airplane. This is traveling with a passport that I've been traveling with for the past several years, going to a destination that I've been to several times in the last year. And this time the U.S. government decided that I wasn't going to go. They pulled me aside. 3 armed Customs and Border Patrol protection, I guess they call it, officers, took my passport and told me that they were doing so under the orders of the United States State Department. They didn't give me a receipt. They wouldn't give me a receipt. They didn't tell me anything other than it was my duty to call somebody at the State Department and figure out what's going on. And then they took my bags off the airplane and escorted me out of the secure zone back into the check-in lobby and told me I was free to go.
And so tell me again, what was the conference you were going to go to? You were supposed to speak at?
Most of your audience might be familiar with Davos. When you say Davos, Switzerland, the World Economic Forum, they go, oh, that's the most elite global forum. 2,700 attendees went to go to Davos. That was last year. The St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, 25,000 attendees from around the world go. It is the most important meeting taking place in the world. President Putin, the Russian president, will be delivering the opening address tomorrow, and then you have the movers and shakers from around the world gathering to talk about. This year a big thing is BRICS. Russia's hosting the BRICS forum in October. They're talking about BRICS. They're talking about multilateralism. They're talking about the new world, a world that is in opposition to the policies of the United States. This is a huge, huge deal. It was a huge honor to be invited, and I continue to be somewhat depressed that I'm not going.
Were you going to give a speech?
I was going to participate on 2 panels, and then I was going to do a lot of different presentations. So my role at this conference was not a minor role. It was for an American attending a global conference with 25,000 attendees, it was a pretty significant role.
And so if people don't know, BRICS, so what's happening is that the world is now rejecting the United States dollar as being the reserve currency of the world, which is going to be catastrophic for our economy. They're now the petrodollar, which is another thing that props up our economy and our dollar. They're now starting to sell oil. Saudi Arabia is selling oil in other denominations besides the U.S. dollar. And so there's these power centers, these economic power centers that are sprouting up to oppose the United States Western hegemony. And the only thing that the United States knows to do back is to do more war and do more sanctions, which is the exact reason why people want to get rid of the dollar, because when you do sanctions on another country's economy, what you're actually doing is you're weaponizing the dollar. And so you're making people not want to, and that's the worst thing you could do. But of course, that's what they do all the time. And do you think the people who, is it, my theory is they don't care, but or is it that they're dumb, right? Because this is what they said would happen with Trump, that he was going to scare away everybody and this world wouldn't respect us, and it would be, but that's what's happening under the neocons that are in the White House right now, right?
Yes. You know, again, I go back to when I say Davos, everybody goes, oh yeah, that's where all the guys flying with their planes and it's really a big deal. And Davos is nothing. Davos thinks it's the center of the world. This week, St. Petersburg is the center of the world. 25,000 people from around the world gathering. And these people are serious about dumping the dollar. These people are serious about opposing the rules-based international order. They're coming up with an alternative to the G7 that's led by Russia, by China, by India, by anybody other than the United States. The West doesn't want to acknowledge this. We are like ostriches with our head in the sand. We are pretending that this isn't happening. We continue to have our club gather and we tell each other how important we are and how wonderful we are and how powerful the dollar is. Meanwhile, after we put pressure on India all year long to stop buying Russian oil, India just signed a 1-year contract with Rosneft to buy 3 million barrels of oil a month, paying rubles, not dollars.
So that if you don't know what that means, that's bad news for the United States. That means the rest of the world is starting to trade in different currency besides the U.S. dollar. And so why is that so important? I'll try to make it as brief. Well, maybe you could explain it better.
Well, what it means is right now, first of all, we use the dollar as the world's reserve currency because of the impact of the petrodollar. That means that we keep dollars in banks around the world. It gives us leverage, first of all. It means that, and you talked about sanctions early on, if we're the reserve currency, everything that happens transactional in the world is dollar-based, which means if you touch the dollar, we say we can sanction you, and we do sanction you. Marco Rubio, who I despise, said one of the most honest things when speaking about the Brazilian economy, when the Brazilians said that they may work to de-dollarize. He said, if they do that, we will no longer be able to control their economy and their policies through sanctions. The most honest thing a senator has said in a long time from Marco Rubio. The other thing is, all these dollars out there, has anybody traveled, back in the good old days when you had to go to Europe and everybody had their own currency? You remember what it was like to go to London and buy at the airport the British pound, and you paid that outrageous fee? And then you had to go to France and buy the franc, and you did it. So half of your budget went on currency exchange costs. America has zero currency exchange costs because the world is the petrodollar. The rest of the world has to buy the dollar. The rest of the world, there's friction there. We are frictionless. It amounts to literally hundreds of billions of dollars a year in free in free monetary economic activity. We're going to lose that when they dump the dollar. And then what do you do with all the dollars? The inflation rate is just, all these dollars are out there attached to oil. What happens when they stop using the dollars and all these dollars have to come home? Our economy can't handle that adjustment. This is a disaster for the United States of America, and it didn't have to be. The dollar is a currency of convenience, and a lot of the people today that have their heads in the sand, they've always said it's too inconvenient for China to dump the dollar. It's too inconvenient for Russia to dump the dollar. But you know what's more inconvenient, Jimmy? Sanctions.
That's
and
right.
When we sanction the living hell out of everybody, they finally went, that's far more inconvenient than dumping the dollar. And now the world is on the dump the dollar bandwagon, and America doesn't realize it yet. They are talking about a BRICS currency coming into fruition when the Russians host the BRICS summit in October. There's serious talk about that. Something the analysts in the West said will never happen. They continue to say it will never happen. Too hard to do, too inconvenient. You know what's hard to do? Keep with the dollar when America uses it to punish you. That's what's hard to do.
And that's what we've been doing to Russia like crazy. And, that was a big impetus for our invasion of or bombing and of Libya was Muammar Gaddafi was going to create his own currency, and it was going to compete with the euro and the dollar, and that it was going to be a currency for Africa, and they couldn't have that because then we couldn't control them. And so that's why that was the bit. So that's why, this whole idea of, we're democracy and freedom, and Muammar he's gonna kill his own people and all that stuff. Yeah. It's all about money and hegemony and control, and which is exactly what the Ukraine war is all about. So why do you think the State Department had such a hard on for you? Why did they want to stop you from going there?
I mean, ultimately, they have to answer that question, and I don't want to sound like a narcissist. I have had a very big impact on U.S.-Russian relations over the course of the last couple of years. My message of peace has resonated inside Russia, and my opposition to American policies are popular in Russia, and that's okay. The U.S. can ignore that. But I'm starting to have success in taking this message out of Russia and bringing it back to a broader audience in the United States. The impact of my work in Russia is starting to resonate here in the United States. And I think to have me in a high-profile manner participating in panels at St. Petersburg, and then going on this tour that was going to produce, a high-level documentary about the reality of Russia. This was just too much, and they saw an easy target, and they shut it down.
So it's just part of more narrative control. That's it, right? Because that's it.
There's no other explanation. As I said before, I've been traveling to Russia. I mean, why didn't they pull my passport the first time I went? That was in May of last year. Why didn't they pull my passport when I traveled again in January? I came back from Russia having traveled to Crimea and the new territories, Donetsk and all that, as a journalist. Very controversial thing to do. The Ukrainians want to kill me. I'm on the same death list that you are. Yay. At that point in time, they took my passport and held it for hours. And then they returned it to me and let me come home. So this trip, I'm doing the exact same thing I did before. And they said, no, we're going to pull your passport now. Why now? And the only reason why I can think of is they didn't want me to go on this trip.
And do you have any insight into the judge, Napolitano?
I know everything about what happened to Judge Napolitano. It had nothing to do with my passport. Let's see, he was not on the airplane. He did not get kicked off the airplane. He didn't lose his passport. The tour that I was going to take with this documentary film crew is sponsored by a Russian who I consider to be a very close friend, Aleksander Zurionov. And he's the director of what's known as the Investment Development Agency of Novosibirsk. Yesterday morning, I got a notification that he was arrested and charged with corruption. Now, he denies the charges. This is an internal Russian thing, none of my business. But all I know is that my passport said on the visa, sponsored by the Investment Development Agency of Novosibirsk. And the head of the Investment Development Agency of Novosibirsk just got arrested. And I was sitting there saying, I have enough experience in Russia where I can go there on my own and gut it out. Judge Napolitano is a friend of mine. He's somebody who I respect. He's a colleague. And there was no way in hell that I was going to let Judge Napolitano get on an airplane and fly into an unknown situation. So I called the judge up and I said, Your Honor, don't get on the plane because I can't guarantee the outcome. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. What I'm saying is I can't guarantee what's going to happen when you land. And if I can't guarantee that, then I can't be responsible for being the guy that invited you to Russia on that. So I'm the one that told Judge Napolitano not to get on the airplane. And it turned out to be a good thing because had he got on the airplane, he'd be in first class and watching me get pulled off the plane, and he'd have taken off without me. And it would have been interesting for him. They would have treated him very well. I've been told by all the Russians and all the other Americans that there was no way the judge was going to be left floundering. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I made the only decision a friend does. And I took care of my friend, looked out for my friend, and I advised my friend not to get on the airplane.
Okay. So what do you so you think you'll ever be allowed to go back to Russia?
Absolutely. I mean, I've done nothing wrong. I've broken no laws, that I'm aware of, and I think I know what's going on here. And I'll say it here. As you know, I was arrested and charged and convicted as a sex offender. I disagree with those charges. I've disputed them. It doesn't matter. As far as the U.S. government's concerned, I am a registered sex offender. They passed laws recently that require registered sex offenders to have a stamp in their passports, the stamp of shame. The idea is to shame you into not traveling. I don't care. The government can put any label on me. I don't accept the label. I reject the label. But my passport was issued to me in 2021 without the stamp of shame. And I'm thinking that the U.S. government decided that this was the time to revoke the passport unilaterally, because that's the only condition under which they can revoke the passport unilaterally. So I think they did that, but they're not telling me. They're not communicating with me. I'm left to speculate wildly. But when I run through the range of options as to why they would do this, the only one that has any plausibility is that my passport didn't have the stamp of shame. And so they revoked it, and now they're going to make me wait for a period of time before they allow me to get a passport with the stamp of shame. But once I get it, as I do with everybody, I communicate freely. I let every country I know that I was arrested. These were the charges. This is a conviction. I oppose it. It's up to you to decide whether or not you believe my side of the version. I don't care. If you believe my side of the version, you want me to come and participate in activities, I'll do that. If you are like the British and say, no, you'll never be allowed back in, I've been to London many times. I don't need to go to London again. I don't care what other people think. I know what the truth is, but that's what I think is going on right here. So I do believe that eventually I'll get my passport back. But until I overturn this conviction on appeal, they're going to put a stamp of shame in my passport. That's what I believe is happening.
Is it your version of your conviction? Is it something you can share with this? Is it a long story? Is it
my version of the conviction is I committed no crime. And the prosecutor wanted to take activity that maybe a married man wouldn't want to admit to his wife, but not a crime, consenting activity among adults, and twist it into something that was a crime. It's a 100% manufactured case. It's a computer-driven case, Jimmy, where they wouldn't allow the computer to be introduced as evidence in trial. Think about it. Think about a murder trial where they say, we won't let the gun be introduced. I went to prison for 3 years as a sex offender. You know what they do to sex offenders in prison, Jimmy? It ain't an easy ride. Guess what happened to me? I went, the guards told me when I came in, don't talk about your case. Well, hell, it was all over TV. So I went straight to the gangs. I went to the Crips, the Bloods, and the Latin Kings, the big three that kill sex offenders. And I went up to them and I put all my paperwork on the table and I said, read it. If you guys think I'm a sex offender, we'll go out right now and I'll kill about 50 of you before you get me. But if that's what you want to do, let's do it. They read it and they came back and they said, you're screwed. You got screwed. There's no crime here. In order to get out of prison, you have to take sex offender therapy. But in order to do this, you have to plead guilty. I went to the head and I said, I'm not pleading guilty. I didn't commit a crime. I'm guilty of nothing. He said, well, then you'll never get out on parole. I said, that's too bad. What I did say is I put the file in front of him. I said, everything in there I'm guilty of, but none of it is a crime. Guess what happened, Jimmy? I'm the only sex offender ever to be paroled from Pennsylvania State Prison without ever confessing his crime, because even they said you committed no crime. The warden said you committed no crime. The guard said you committed no crime. The judge and the prosecutor who wanted to make a name off of putting me in jail, they said I did. That's the result. But square it. I was supposed to be in jail for 5.5 years. I got paroled after 3, and I never pled guilty. The parole documents, the parole officers say, why are we paroling him? He won't plead guilty to this crime. Well, the warden released me because she knew that I wasn't guilty. That's it. I committed no crime. Not a single. There is no victim. There is no victim. It's a cop who registered as an adult and then later said that he was a 15-year-old girl. There's no victim. There was no contact. There was nothing. this would have been thrown out of every court in the world except the one that I was in, because they had a hard-on for putting Scott Ritter, the former UN weapons inspector, in jail. They made it a capital case, and they had a judge who, like I said, wouldn't allow. I'll give you another one, just so you know. We hired an expert, a former federal officer who wrote the book on child exploitation crimes. He is an expert witness that every prosecutor brings in with a 100% conviction rate. And we said, go through my computer, the one we wanted admitted at trial. And he said, you don't want me to go through your computer. I said, I absolutely do. He said, no, because where there's smoke, there's fire, and I will find it. And once I find it, I have to declare it to the prosecutor, and you're going to jail. I said, take my computer. He did. He wrote a letter to the judge, said for the first time in his entire career, he went through the computer and found not only no evidence of a crime, but no indication of intent to commit a crime. There was nothing on this computer. He exonerated me. We submitted that letter, the computer, everything to the judge, and the prosecutor said, I don't want it admitted at trial. And the judge said, okay, it's Pennsylvania, Jimmy. Go to Pennsylvania on vacation, leave on probation, baby. You don't want to mess with Pennsylvania courts. I was railroaded. That's my version of events. I'll stick with it because it's all fact-based. I have documents to back everything I said. Someday I may even write a book about it. But until that happens, unfortunately, I'm a convicted sex offender, and I have to register. Again, Pennsylvania made me what they call a sexually violent predator. I came to New York, and they made me a level 1 offender because they looked at everything. They said, you're not guilty of anything, but we can't overturn a Pennsylvania conviction. But they made me a level 1 offender, which means no notifications, no restrictions, no nothing. But I do have to register. And because of that registration requirement, the United States government can insist that I put the stamp of shame in my passport. And
so, is this prosecution of you, is it because you are a thorn in the side of the establishment and the war machine?
Let's put it this way. The police officer who did the so-called sting knew that no crime had been committed, and that paperwork was in his safe. But he had told me at the time, you better get a lawyer because we're going to come after you. We're going to seize all your computers. And so I got a lawyer. He said that they'd come in 8 days. That's when I said, well, rather than come to my house and raid it, why don't we get our computer looked at and I said, why don't we turn my computer over to the prosecutor so they understand no crime was committed? My lawyer said, we can't turn the computers over without them being checked first. As a lawyer, I can't allow you to do that. So that's when we had them checked. Nothing was found. Then we waited 2 months and nothing came from Pennsylvania. So my lawyer went and met with the prosecutor and said, I understand you guys are looking at it. And the prosecutor went, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And they went back and finally the prosecutor said, well, you got to give me a name. And he said, well, Scott Ritter. And the prosecutor went, As soon as my lawyer left, he called the cop and said, there's something in your safe. Yeah. Scott Ritter. Yeah. Bring it. And that's when they started manufacturing the case. Yeah. It's only because of who I am. If I was anybody else, this never would have been brought to trial because no crime was committed. Okay.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, telling your story. It's wild that you got pulled off that plane, but such is life. And well, good luck on doing that documentary.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to getting it done once I get my passport back.
Okay. All right, buddy. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go to a break. We'll be right back.
round a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbinical grace soiling the mattresses. Well, let me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish Shmuley man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
At this time, more than any other time, you know, revolution is necessary. It is necessary. Not only based on what has happened with the MOVE organization, you know, the babies that have been murdered, you know, MOVE adults that have been murdered, bombs being dropped on us, but past that to what is happening with all black people, so-called minority people, you know, money poor people. You know, this government, as has been said earlier, has waged war on us. But you know, something about us, particularly here in America, we don't really understand that. You know, we don't really know what war is. You know, for black people, for poor people, that people see as good, that they wasn't forced to do, that they didn't do to try to keep black people appeased, you know, and calm down so that black people wouldn't riot. A prison situation is a crystallized example of that. You can make phone calls in prison. They have movies in prison, but they don't have those things because they just want to be nice to prisoners. They have those things because they know damn well if they don't have, you know, people being able to contact their family, if they don't have, you know, facilities for people to sit there and watch movies, people are going to be frustrated, upset, and they're going to direct that frustration at them prison administrators, and they're going to have riots on their hands. You know, they're going to have people in them prisons turning them prisons out. That's why they have movies. That's why they have access to phones the way they do. And a stop to it when we don't like it, or encouraging it when it's something that's in our interest. You know, we have to call the shots. The people have to take the reins of this system and start dictating, you know, what we need, what needs to be done. And, you know, taking the initiative to do it ourselves. We can't rely on this system. I mean, you know, don't people see what's happening? Every single confrontation that MOVE people have been involved in, every single issue, you know, oppression, economic issues, every single issue facing our people, you know, is something that can be dealt with very, very simply. All people got to do is make their wishes known. All people have to do is stand up and say, listen, we're not accepting that. Unity is the key. Unity is the key to revolution. Revolution ain't nothing to be afraid of. It ain't nothing to shy away from. Revolution, contrary to what officials, you know, this system and those backing the officials running the system, you know, want people to believe that revolution means violence, you know, means blood in the street. I'm saying it can get to that point, but it don't have to be violent. You know, when people come together and take a strong stand on an issue, this government don't have no choice but to listen. Where you think they get their authority from? They don't have no power, but they do have authority to do certain things. Where you think they get it from? They get it from us, from the people. You know, they get it from us accepting the things that they do to be done to stop it, then you have some people who want to then turn around and say, yeah, well, you know, it's the best we have, and want to make excuses. The time for excuses is over. It's over. You know, every man, woman, and child has to be involved in this revolution. Not only has to be, but is, whether you want to be or not. I mean, our babies gave their lives for this revolution on May 13th. You know, men, women, and children were murdered. And not just move babies, you know. What about all of the young men, women, you know, children 8, 9 years old shot down on the street by cops, you know, by drug pushers? I mean, you know, where do you think that mentality comes from? It comes from this system, from the mentality of this system of getting over, you know, making a quick buck, you know. I'm saying that's where that needs to be done to stop it. Then, you know, what I want people to really, really understand is that it's past time. It is past time for poor people, black people, you know, to realize that this system has failed you. It has failed you. You can't get nothing from it. And what people got to do is withdraw our support from it and start doing for ourselves. That's what we got to do. You know, how long are people going to sit back and beg, you know, this government to do what's right when for hundreds of years all you've gotten is a slap in the face? All you've gotten is this government kicking your ass. That's all. That's all black people have ever gotten from this government.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit